Okay, guys, I'm back. Hopefully, y'all got it. It says we are live. I've got my little live icon going. It says two people. Okay, hello, James. It may be one of them nights. You got to remember, we got so much heat going on right now. It could be that the internets and stuff is just so hot it's causing the buffering. Johnny 3806, Gray Wolf. Okay, y'all let me know if it starts doing that. We may just have to get off early night. It may be the heat, you know, not just on my end, but all of it. Think how hot them wires are hanging on them poles right now. So could be that. Good, thank you. Forest Witch, thank you. Gray Wolf, okay. Yeah, I got on and was doing a live with Dan Lutz. And on my end, you'd have like a minute and it'd just freeze. And then it'd start back up and it'd run about 10 seconds and then freeze. And that's all it would do on my end. And so it's fine on my end, but and I'm trying to have a conversation with him, and I'm just, yeah. Sometimes you just can't have it. Okay, Outback Al says it's okay in Australia. Hello, Justin Johnson Frisbee. Okay, Johnny, the 102 in Texas feels like 108. I hear you. Got you in Kansas. Turn the darn light off. Yeah, I hear you. Gray Wolf, yes, I have seen the peasant knife. I've had a couple of them. In fact, I think I got one on the shelf over there that swivels around in the handle. They're very nice. Yeah, the Gray Wolf, those go back a long, long way. In the 1700s, they had those type of knives. They just take two horn scales on it and rivet it to tang and rivet it to sell so it flipped around. And same basic idea that a straight razor was, except it's more long bladed and long tang to be able to grip it and block it. Peasant knives are good. Kenneth, thank you very much. Glad Southeast Louisiana is okay. Lane White, hello. Chuck Miller, good evening. Yeah, those SVORDs, Ford peasant. I've got that's what I've got over there. Someone from Australia, New Zealand, one of those two, sent it to me as a gift with several other little things from down there. And I enjoy getting things from other parts of the world like that. Blackie, have you ever used a Bali song or is a machete, Bali song or a machete better? For me and my neck of the woods, a machete's better. And I think you mean a barong instead of a Bali song. A barong is kind of like a thing like this. Bali song was a flip knife, butterfly knife was Bali Song's company, butterfly. But the name was a Bali song and it had a symbol of a butterfly on it. We called them butterfly knives, but it was Bali song was the name of it, and a barong was the machete. But of the two, I like a machete better. Yeah, Grey Wolf, they are. As a starting out knife, yeah, they really are. Timothy Barnes, glad to do it. Yeah, a balsam or a parang, you know. Most parts of the world where you go into that have jungles, India, Africa, South America, Southeast Asia, and etc., you see some sort of long knife that is going to be not a sword, and at the same time, it's not a dagger, and at the same time, it's not really a knife, uh, but it's for cutting vines, leaves, small limbs, light stuff, and they're lightweight, so they've got speed, and that's how they get their cutting force. It's thin and it's fast and it's sharp, so it just kind of pops through it rather than actually burying it into it. Um, Brian Holbrook, good evening. And so therefore they're very good. I like a kukri, but there are times when machete is actually a better choice because of how much chopping you're going to do. You know, especially when you're doing it over your head to make a clearing to be able to have an area around your head where everything ain't right here on top of you. Brian Holbrook, good evening. Woo, yeah. Well, them rubber coated ones always have that smell. You got to let them air out. Gray Wolf. Uh, Not my particular thing, but I remember seeing it done. They would take and uh, cover it in salt, leave it covered in salt for about 2 hours in the refrigerator. Then they would add water to it, let it soak for overnight, and then it'd be put into the smoker. That's what I saw. But now again, this was not my particular thing. That was another family member that they deal with the smoker in the smokehouse. I was a different stuff. But I've seen it done, but that's about the best I can tell you off the top of my head. Now, if Bear was on, Bear's actually done that. He's actually given me several slabs of bacon. So, Sean, hello to England. Well, okay, Gray Wolf, yeah, it will be salty, but when you smoke the bacon, after you're done smoking it, you're supposed to soak it to get the salt out of it before you cook it the second time. Because I remember salt cured bacon and hams and stuff wrapped up in cloth and in a smokehouse, and you didn't just come out and cut them off unless you really really wanted salt. You always cut the meat and you salted it. I mean, you soaked it for at least a half hour to an hour to get the extra salt out of it before you went and threw it in the pan to cook it for the eating, which is really heating it up more than anything. But it doesn't come out like store stuff where you can just automatically grab it after it's complete. It's still going to be salty unless you soak it the second time. Azrael Mercy, good evening. There's the problem. Uh, I want the smoke flavor, but I don't want to lose the salt. It's a challenge. I'll let better experts than me fill you in on how to do that. Fred Freiberg, glad you from Tractor Supply, glad you found them. That was my, you know, I typically wear something like a 32, but for in the summertime I'll go to a 34 or 36, so it's looser on me and more freedom of movement and let air circulate. Uh, People wear a lot of times pants too tight, and I will wear a looser pants. I wear a belt, and so it's actually loose on me. And because of that, I want the air to circulate around. And in winter, I want to trap warm air. So bigger is better. Johnny, yes, there'll be another video coming up pretty soon on cooking fuels and stuff like that. We're going to talk about stoves and ovens. And I'm going to use the Coleman stove to show how you can bake and do on it. And also going to talk about how you can take a bush pot and a Trangia and bake in it and stuff like that. There's things will be coming up when it cools off a bit. As I said earlier, it's just too hot for me right now. And I'm sorry, guys. I really apologize. It's just age and health, and it's too big a risk. I get out there, and it does not take much exertion at all, and I'm hassling, you know. And I do not have asthma. I have lung damage and I have heart damage. And it's just the body is fighting the heat and the fact you can't cool off. And so my temperature is like those old cars that'll run hot, you know. In the summertime, my heat indicator goes over a little bit. I just don't cool as well as I used to. So, Buckeye, good evening. Jeff, hello to Missouri. Ezra, thank you very much. Right back out. Are you bringing out small book like we had in the Scouts? Oh, you like a field book? No, the book I was talking about was going to be a bigger book for my Master Woodsman series. But I'd also thought about doing little small, call it a chapter book on cooking or uh, fire lighting and things like that, doing like pamphlets as well. And that's in the future. I know I've been saying that for 3 years, guys. I've got the material now for my videos to transcribe. Then I got to run that through a something like chatbot that will turn the verbal text into a written text that I can go through and edit. And I've got a couple of chapters of that done already. And then once I get it all done, my good friend William Collins, the knife maker, he's published 2 books before, so he knows how to do the self-publishing bit. And so he's going to be my mentor, and I'll publish the books. And I promise when I do, I will let everybody know. I promise. That's my goal, is to get all this stuff down while I can. Number one, Big Bear, you're just in time. We had to reboot the whole system because the internet was hopping in and out. So you're not bad at all. You're in there just fine. Elvin, reporting back in. Thank you. Jennifer, hello. Yeah, War Child. What was it? I think it was Mark Twain said that youth is wasted on the young. Yeah. About the time we learn what we're doing and really enjoy it, we're at the end of the road. So. Oh, Jonathan Frisbee, absolutely. It'll be photography. It will not be. I'm not doing drawing illustrations. It will be photographs. So when I'm talking about something, there'll be a photograph of it. If it's nothing else, my diagram, but it will be photographs. It's not going to be an illustrated book. It'll be photographs. Azrael, swollen ankles after an extensive hike. Am I not drinking enough water? How tight are your boots? Did you change socks halfway through? As we start exerting and we start pounding on them, doing that walking, our feet actually swell. This is a natural defense of the body to puff up the tissues, because otherwise that's meat and bone banging together on whatever that hard surface is you'd be walking on. Back when we were walking barefoot, it way the body swells up. Like you put your hands in the sink and you start doing dishes and your fingers swell up. When you're exerting, your feet are pounding on it, your feet are going to swell. It's just part of it. It's part of the body's natural defense, which is typical name is called rewild. Good evening, sir. Edema. And pitting edema is whenever you press and you take your finger back and there's still a hole. That's bad. You need to go to a doctor for that. But if you poke in and let go and it snaps back like that, that's okay. But when you poke and you pull back and it don't go away, that is a medical condition that it could be heart problems and stuff you need to go to a doctor with. But what I tell people is, 1, carry extra socks. 2, about an hour or so after you got walking, as soon as your feet start when they start hurting, stop, change socks. You compress the padding in that sock, see? And now it's kind of meat and bone inside that boot. In nature, our foot would naturally flex. And if you look at somebody who's walked barefoot most of their life, their feet look like that. They don't look like this, like a city dweller. Their feet are swelled out and they've got muscles in their feet. They can climb trees with them puppies. And it's because their feet have been forward to flex. Inside of a shoe, you don't get that. No matter how you step, it's still in the same shape pattern, inside of that boot. And so the feet are kind of limited in what they can do to pump and flex and try to protect themselves. And so when your feet start hurting, change socks. It makes a huge difference. And also when you retie your shoe, the time changing socks, always loosen it up and then tie it to snug then, because your feet actually swell in doing 15, 20, 30-mile hikes and things like that. I learned I had a pair of Army boots that I thought, man, these must be great because they're U.S. Army boots. And they fit, just fit. And I would do a 10, 15, 20-mile hike, and then things would swell up to my feet hurt so bad. And what it was is the feet wouldn't swell, but the boot wouldn't give. And I had thin socks back in them days. And I can clearly remember doing a 30-miler with some friends one time. And why? Because we were dumb and stupid and trying to prove how tough we were. God, we were idiots. And carrying packs. And I thought that I couldn't walk because when we finally got to camp, which was 28 miles, and when I got to camp and I did unlace my boots, you could see in the top of my boot, at the top of my foot, the lace pattern where my foot had swelled that hard against it. And I took my boots off to let my feet air. And after about an hour, I decided to get up, and I couldn't get my feet back in those boots. Forget it. It was like they're 2 sizes too small. I could not wedge my feet back in there. And the next day, when it was time for us to walk out, I couldn't go. My friends had to walk back, get the car, and come back up there and pick me up because I couldn't walk. My feet had swollen up so big because of it. And you've got to take care of your feet. You've got to let your feet. So you want a boot that's a little bit too big. You want a nice thick sock. Take extra socks. At least after an hour or so after you've started, and even less if you're doing heavy climbing or something, untie and retie your boot. Let that swell and take the pressure off. And that pressure can cause your feet to trap water. It's like a tourniquet. And so you want the boot to be snug, but not so snug it's cutting off circulation. And that's what causes a great deal of the hurt, is the fact that lactic acid builds up because it's not being flushed out because you're not walking and flexing your foot, see? And so that's the reason they say in the Army, at every opportunity, take them boots off, cool them feet, change your socks, put powder on. That was a big thing back when the U.S. Army walked everywhere. They don't do it so much now because you're flying everywhere or driving everywhere. Shane Lawson. Well, hello. Thank you for joining us. All right. JK25, Belgian paratrooper boots for me. Yeah, you understand. Elvin, Blackie, have you heard about the Ontario Knife Company going out of business? What are your thoughts? I bought a 12-inch machete from and thinking of buying a couple more knives from. Yes, they've gone out of business. However, not getting too in depth, but some things that I'm seeing that we're on just the beginning of this big transition back from overseas to us, where the overseas market is collapsing and the industry has to come back here in order to survive because it ain't going to be over there. And because of that, I'm pretty sure somebody's going to buy that name, if nothing else, those designs. And so it might be 4 or 5 years, but I bet you there will be Old Hickory Butcher Knives show back up. It may not be under the name Ontario, but I guarantee there'll be Old Hickory Knives showing back up, made somewhere. You know, it's got to be at least equal because those are kitchen knives. And Mama doesn't seem as willing to buy frugal stuff as you and I. Cause, man, that's a cool knife. I got to have that. That if she wants that butcher knife to work, and if it don't work, she ain't buying it again. So I'm pretty sure they're going to come back, just like Night Saber Schrade went out of business and was out of business 3 or 4 years. Old Timer, Old Hickory, all of that went out of, Old Timer and Uncle Henry all went out of business, and yet it came back where it was picked up by another company and brought back. So I'm figuring it'll be back, just under maybe a slightly different name, but I'm pretty sure it'll be back. It's going to be a while. David Neal, hello to New Zealand. Johnny 3080 30806, keep an old hickory meat cleaver in my pack for chopping, lighter than a hatchet. Very true, and will do a decent job. Be careful though, it will get stuck easy. It's such a thin blade that if you get it really, really, really sharp and you got something like, oh, I don't know, black gum, you can rear back and you can sink that sucker in there so deep you ain't getting it out because the wood will separate out and then clamp on it like a vise. So be careful trying to split stuff. Have a wedge handy. Make the wedge before you start splitting something big. So that if it does get stuck, you can then take a stick and pound the wedge in and wedge it back up and get your knife back out. Russell, correct. Getting old knee-high ladies' hose and putting them on under your socks are a great way to keep you from getting blisters because it gives it something to slide on. And that nylon will not hold moisture, so your perspiration will pass through into the sock, but it'll keep a slick surface and keep them moving like that. Green River didn't produce that specifically, that style of butcher knife. They did produce a butcher knife, but they never had the name Old Hickory. Old Hickory was just, when you say butcher knife, that's a given design, like saying Bowie or Barlow or, Boy Scout knife. It was designed. The company was Ontario. They made that shape. See? So no matter what company makes it, when they say it's a butcher knife, it's that design. See? So is the name a company or the name of the design? Butcher knife is a design. Like we say, Arkansas toothpick, that taper, razor edge dagger. Doesn't matter what company makes it, it's going to be called an Arkansas toothpick. And so Green River did make a butcher knife, but it didn't use the term Old Hickory. It's just Old Hickory picked it up from them. And just like Green River went out of business, and Russell picked it up, went using the name and the designs. So when I was around, it was a Russell Green River. And I'm sure somebody's going to pick up Old Hickory, and it'll be, like Russell Old Hickory butcher knife. I'm sure they'll come back to making them, and the machetes and stuff too. If they're smart, they will. Yeah, Gray Wolf. You used to get the kit, especially in the rendezvous days. CVA sold several different type of knife kits and stuff like that. People starting out wanting a knife. Yep, they were good. Pink, my brother, how are you doing, my brother? I've been worried about you. The Pink's in the house. Joseph Frazier, hello to Ohio. Okay, Fred, I'm in the process of making toggles. Should I make them single hole or double hole? I like the single hole if it's going on the line. The only thing I like that double hole for is the actual connector that's coming from the Prusik knot going to the tarp, because I could, as you saw in that last video, pull out and form a loop easy to go through the thing and hook and button. The rest of it, I just want a single hole going through. Just me. You are correct, Gray Wolf. I remember the Atlanta Cutlery had those exact knives in blank form. And there used to be a company out of Texas. I can see it. They used to have a display you'd see in books and magazines where they sold knife making supplies. And you could buy the blank, and then you had all these knife blanks and different ways of attaching it and stuff. God, I can see their name, but I can't pronounce. Just can't pull it out of my head. But it's something Knife Maker Supply in Texas. But there were several companies that made it where you could get them with those forging marks. And it's not actually forging marks, it's a stamp. But yeah, it does the same job as forging marks. It was just to stiffen up that thin blade so it wouldn't twist when they bear down on it, increase the surface area. But yeah, I remember being able to buy those as blanks. I remember going into hardware stores, old hardware stores, and seeing a box of them, just 50 blades stuck in there. And above it was a box that said handles, rivets. And a knife was $2, and the 2 rivets and the handle was another $1. So $3, you put together your own butcher knife. Frontier Survival, good evening. Eddie Lewis, we have a set of the old case butcher knives that belong to my grandfather. They'll last a lifetime. I've seen them wore out from people that really, really used them. It started out a butcher knife, ended up being a fillet knife, but that was back when people really, really, really used a knife a lot. Jesse, thanks for the Sniper Veil swamp cooler idea. Helped in the recent heat. Glad to do it. It's my number one go-to way. Pam, thank you. Jansen Knife Supply. That's it. It had a different name. I think it changed back about 2000 to that Jansen knife. It was something else before that, but it was like Texas Knife Maker Supply, and then it became Jansen. Good, Pink. I'm glad. Looking forward to you being at the camp out in October, brother. Yep, War Child. You used to be a meat cutter. Then you understand. I knew guys that worked in butcher houses. I knew guys that worked in chicken plants that would take boning knives and dissect by hand, chickens and stuff. Them dudes was scary with a knife. They were flat out scary because they didn't have time to waste around. Rudis 13, good evening. Sports Mobile 83. Hello to Cleveland, Georgia. Yes, Outback. That double hole is perfect for those lines to run through. Yeah, you can do it. Anonymous, hello. Buckeye 80. Oh. The biggest tome, I would say, oh boy. If you'll go back and look at my lives in that playlist and go back three or four ago, maybe 5. In the beginning of the video, I talk about and I bring up books because you'd asked about it. If you go back and look at my lives, I've spent about 10 minutes talking about books that I recommend for people starting out their library. It'd be just faster than me having to stop and run and grab one because I don't want to misquote a name to you, but I hold them up and I turn around so you can see the ISPC number so you can get them yourself. So if you back up a little bit, you can find those. Will Killingsworth, good evening. Hanging in there, brother. YouTube Press, how y'all? How you doing? Gunsmith 4570. Yep. I had friends that was all the time buying knife blanks. They used to have a Natchez buoy. It was not the standard Jim buoy, but a Natchez buoy. And a lot of guys in Rendezvous started toting them. They were very interesting knives. Jeff Conley, good evening. Woo. Okay. Blackie, what can I do to get the hammer off a 50 caliber Kentucky, or at least get the hammer striking center on the nipples? I've cut wood out of the stock and I can't get the hammer off to sand some off. Okay, here's what I recommend. Take just a lock. Take it and drop it into some boiling water for about 5 minutes. Pull it out and then stick it in the freezer. That expands the metal, and then you put it in the freezer and it pulls it up tight. Okay? A lot of times, if it's a friction fit thing, that'll make it come apart. After it's been in the freezer about an hour and a half or so, so it's good and cold, see if you can gently tap and get it to come out then. Sometimes you can wiggle it and it'll come out. If not, I have actually before taken it and put the plate, and then run a punch and try to tap, tap, tap and get the tumbler to come out the back side. Just run through the screw hole and don't hit the screw threads. You gotta get a punch or a nail that'll actually run down and round it off so it'll go all the way to the bottom. Go tap, 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 tap. So here's the plate. Here sits that tumbler, so the tumbler will come down and that'll squeeze it off the hammer. Try that. I've had one or two that was pressed on. CVAs used to be bad that way. I guess they put them together in the factory with a press, and you couldn't get that hammer off unless you did that. You'd have to heat it up, then freeze it, and then tap it off. Hope that works for you. Glad you're gonna be there, Pink. I look forward to spending some time with you. Paul, glad. I hope to see you up there at the Silver Wolves classes. Yeah, a lot of times with working gun parts, you can't just grab a huge hammer and hit it, and so you got to work a way around it. I had a gas piston inside of a M1 carbine one time that sucker froze in place, and I got the pin out and I couldn't get that puppy out for love, money, nor nothing. And I didn't want to scar it up by trying to grab it with vice grips or something. And I told a friend of mine about it, and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. He said, oh, we'll fix that real easy. And so we brought it over. I brought it over, and he stuck that part in a small thing, and he poured liquid nitrogen around it, and he cooled that sucker down like that. And then he slapped compressed air to the barrel so it went through that hole and popped it right out. It was like 20 pounds of pressure, and it came straight out. And then we cleaned it out and got all the carbon and stuff out. But cold a lot of times works better than heat in some cases. Russell, glad to do it. That's what I'm here for. I spent a lifetime learning this stuff, and it's my job to try to pass it on before I go. Now it's your job. All of you, tag, you're it. Your job is to take what I've showed you and pass it on to the next generation. Don't let it die with me. I'm the transition between the old woodsmen who in the 20s and 30s were raising their kids during the Great Depression, having to hunt to feed the family because there just wasn't enough any other way. I was taught by them, from nearly a century ago. Their knowledge is what I've learned, and was weird enough to be a kid that wanted to learn such things. I enjoyed being around old people much more than I did people my age. By far. Other kids want to, let's go play football. No, I want to sit and learn about the antiques on the wall from the old ladies at the community center. What's this? Oh, we used to use that for such and such. That's what I wanted to learn. And so my job is to pass it on to you guys and then tag, you're it. Now it's your turn to take everything I've showed you and pass it on to the next generation. We don't want it to go away, because the days are going to come when they're going to need this knowledge badly. Azrael Mercy, what are we going to need to bring with us to the class? At this time, we don't have any requirements you need. You're going to need to just bring your own camping gear and etc. As I understand it, the camping site, what it's going to be, you're going to come in on Thursday, set up your camp. He's got a great big area for that. We'll have places where you can put up hammocks and a car camp next to your car. And then we'll have a community area for a big community fire, talk, etc. And then we'll have individual class areas for everybody to rotate through. At this time, you don't have to bring anything other than what you need for you. So make sure you bring your own food, your own stuff, and water, etc. on site, and just be able to take care of yourself. And the rest of it is be us giving you classes and knowledge. There may be some hands-on stuff, and we're talking about that now. Right now, we're finding out how many people are going to be there. So how much time-consuming stuff we can do. If we got a full house, we're going to have to limit that a little bit. If there's less people, well, then we can bring out some more stuff and have time. I've got a hands-on class that's how to twine, which is many people in a lot of the bushcraft community will show you how to make cordage in nature, how to take it, make double twist ply cordage. What they don't show you is how to turn cordage into a pouch or a bag or a strap or a blanket or whatever. I'll show you how to do that. It's a simple technique. It's exactly the same technique. You just apply it to whether I want a strap or a bag or a blanket or whatever, and you make your own hunks of cordage and create it on the fly and weave it together. I'll show you. It's very simple. It's the same action over and over again. There isn't any fancy knots or whatever. And we'll use jute for it when it comes time, if we get to do it. Because it's a real time consumer. But it'd be where everybody's up there, and I'm going to show you verbatim, and everybody just take some jute and start doing it. And once you learn the basic technique, you just apply it across the board to whatever else you want. It's like the construction knot. I've showed them videos of how to make a loop with a pair of tabs on the end, and how I can stick sticks in there, stick another stick in there, twist it up, wind it up, fold it over the top, and use those two things to tie it. And I can make an elevated bed, a table, a wall, a roof, a door, any large, just varying it. If it's 8 feet long and it's this wide and the pole's 2 inches tall, that's an elevated bed. If it's that big and I lash it between two trees, it's a table. If I bring it up, it becomes an angle on the top, it's a wall. If I do it vertically, it's a roof. If you do this way, it's a wall. If I add 2 hinges, it's a door. It's the same exact technique. It's just how it's being applied. I call it the construction knot, because with that, you can make anything to at least get you through. You can build a cabin in 2 days for a temporary cabin. Not I'm going to be here forever, but more than enough. If I was on the Alone TV show and they stuck me on one of them islands, I'll have a cabin up in less than a week, because I'll build one out of this. I do small sticks and start putting it together. I won't be sleeping in the ground very long. Hike with Mike. Tom Brown's book was a good influence on me back in the 70s. I read those. Those were good books. And his field guides, very knowledgeable. War Child Odin. I've experienced weird stuff out in the woods miles from people. Have you seen anything strange on your outings? Many times. I have seen or heard things I couldn't readily explain what I saw or heard. I've seen strange tracks. I've heard things in the middle of the night that I could not ID. But I'll give you one piece of advice that was given to me by a World War I and World War II vet. There is no such thing as supernatural. There's something natural. We just don't know how to explain it yet. So if there's something out there walking around, it's something real. You know, and he didn't believe in ghosts. So he said, if it makes a track, it moves a leaf, it's got to be living. And to quote Arnold Schwarzenegger, if it bleeds, I can kill it. And so it's just another thing trying to give me troubles. But I've heard things, smelt things, seen things, but what is it? Don't know. The number one thing is remain calm. Now, I'm here to tell you, more than once, Blackie has had to just sit down at the base of a tree and calm his butt down because he was letting his imagination run away from him. And you were sure that that big bad woo 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 is right there, boy. I can hear it breathing. And yet, when you flip the flashlight on, there was nothing there. So sometimes your own mind is your worst enemy. And those are the times you just got to sit down and breathe and talk yourself through it. But at the same time, it is something out there. But what is it? Eddie Lewis, thank you very much for showing it to the scouts. I appreciate that. David Werner, this is live. Hey, James Singer, you cannot interact in pre-recorded. Good AI could, but I'm not pre-recorded. Stephen Ledring, learn a lot from the elderly. More, yeah, true. You'll learn more from the elderly than you will from young people. That's a fact. But now at the same time, young people will often show you ways of doing something you never thought of. I did that with a lot of my elders where they knew how to do an action, but they were not necessarily a good teacher. And so I couldn't say, teach me how to do this. You had to just sit down, shut up, and watch them and figure out what they were doing because they knew one way to do it. And sometimes it was, they were great at it. And sometimes it was like, they showed you how not to do something too. So you just had to learn experience. And I would point out, if you did this instead of that, it would make it easier. And they'd look at you like you suddenly sprouted horns and a tail. And I'd say, can I show you one time? And they, after a while, learned to go, okay, and they'd hand me the knife or whatever, and I'd show them what I was talking about. And maybe they said, well, you're right. That was easier. Or they go, I ain't doing it that way because they'd done it 1,000 times this way. Young people can sometimes show you a new way to do stuff because they'll see it with fresh eyes. Robert Nixon, when do we get details for the Silver Wolf camp? Right now, about a week from now, is when James Bender, who's off on a family thing, will be back. And that's when all of us will get our final ducks in a row. And I'll be doing, starting in September, I will give everybody all the details of the classes and everything. He's got a big family thing that he does every year that he's on. And so we're coordinating with each other. So hang with us. It is coming. Yeah, I'm okay. You're okay. It didn't kill us. So we're both good with that. That's true. Yeah, James, there's not as many of the World War II vets around as there used to be, are there? Floyd Smith. Yeah, the Silver Wolf campouts. Okay, here's what we've got. We've got a rough lesson plan that we're bantering back and forth right now. Myself, Dakota, Mike Simmons, and James Bender. James Bender is on a family thing that's a commitment he has every year, and that he'll be back next week. And then we're going to finalize. As soon as I have a finalized, I will do a video to let everybody know. So I'm figuring like a week and a half from now. We should, here it is, which will still be a full month out. It's going to be some hands-on and a lot of instruction because we're really feeling our way on this first time to find out which way you guys want us to go to Civil War. We don't want to plan, like my first thing that we said between me and James is I don't want this to be a baton death march. These are Silver Wolves. They either have experience or they don't. So let's approach it from the idea they have limited or no experience to begin with. And then we will deal with the individual that does have experience and wants more advanced. We can programmed in to have time for that so I can one-on-one with you and be able to answer some questions you got about something specific, Whereas on the other hand, the person's coming in, they've only camped once in their life, and that was 20 years ago. That's what we're going to have to be, kind of general knowledge with everybody, and then we'll feel out where we're going with this. And I prefer, as my grandfather taught me, show me what you know, and then I'll show you what you don't know. Instead of me starting from the wheel and coming up, um, but it's the crowd we'll have there at the time will know how to adapt. We're going to have a working plan of classes, and then we'll adapt once we get there based upon our audience to how in depth we need to go and etc. Whereas if it's an individual that needs more attention than others because he doesn't have the experience, that's fantastic. We're all committed to spending time and being one on one. Dialed in that we're going to have one on one time so that we can work with everybody. And there's 4 of us and we can do it. That's the best I can tell you right now because we're kind of in the middle of it. Ron Holbrook, hello to. Can you please say hello to my son Ethan? Mom gave to go ahead and say, well, hello to Ethan. How you doing? All right. Yeah, the Justin Baton Death March. There are some schools that they think it's like basic training, and they're trying to get you to be door kickers, and you're going to do this and go do that, and high pressure. We got to do this under high pressure. And there's a place for those schools, but as I've learned in my life, to me, the way I define it is there's a teacher and there's an instructor. The difference is this: an instructor comes in and shows you a better way to do something you already have a good working knowledge of. Okay. A teacher is who starts with somebody that doesn't have a clue how this works, and they teach you all the baby steps to give you the working knowledge. So you go from a teacher to an instructor. An instructor doesn't have to start with the wheel and come forward. A teacher does. And the two overlap to a point, but it's based upon the audience and what the audience needs. I can be either, depending on what the audience is, say, and a little bit of both, depending on the audience. So. Some of the old guys that I learned from, and ladies. There were a lot of old women that I learned a lot from, and it was simply figuring out exactly what they were doing a lot of times because they developed their way of doing it, and they ask them to explain what they're doing. And I pick it up, I do that, and I'm done. That was about the extent of it. They were not teachers, but they were very efficient at what they did. And so you just had to be very observant and figure out what they were doing and how they were doing it. Now, once you did, something I learned early on, and I did a lot of jobs as a young man, all kinds of jobs. From riding a horse and working cows to plumbing to being an electrician flunky to laying brick, driving a truck, digging ditches, name it. I did a lot of stuff, and I found the most effective way when I would come onto a job site was, and you'd have an instructor, the supervisor, whatever, and he'd come up and said, "Do you know what you're doing?" I said, "Let us assume I have no idea. You tell me how you want it done, so it's done the way you want it done." because I know how to do this, but it might not be the way he wants me to do it. So rather than that argument back and forth of which side is better, just tell me the way you want it done. Even if I think it's stupid, I'll do it the way you want it done. You know, and then over time, I may slowly drift over the way I think works a little better, as long as you're not looking over my shoulder and realize, hey, that does work. You know. Joe Cool. Yeah, the Peterson's Field Guide to Trees is one of my favorites. Very good one. And again, if you go back a couple, like 4 or 5 videos of these, of my online chat, go to playlist and go back 3, 4 weeks, maybe 4.5, something like that. And look, I begin the video with me talking about books, and I start showing books, field guides and stuff like that. So I spend about 10, 15 minutes just talking about books. Yeah, Joe Cool, where you're at, okay? A lot of the Peterson's field guides are East Coast, Northern, Southern, whatever. They have regions. And they also have overall books. So if you're trying to learn more of a given thing, what I recommend, excuse me, people start with, unless you have a particular focus, is take a field guide, let's say the Peterson Book of Trees, and take your time and go through it, where the book is broken down where there's visual pictures in different times of the year of what the leaf looks like, any kind of fruit, berry, or whatever looks on it in springtime and fall, you know, so you can see what they look like. And then there's the big white pages that are showing what kind of tree it is. They have a map of the United States and a colored in section where those trees are prevalent. If you are looking to find out what's in your area, what I did with mine was I just took the time and a highlighter, and I went through. And when I looked at tree whatever, if it was in my area, I put a highlight on the name of the tree. Kept going. If it didn't, I didn't put in it. So I don't need Arctic tamarack in Alabama. And same thing whenever I'm looking at the pictures of the fruit or whatever, I'll highlight those as well, of things that are prevalent in my area. So when I look through the book, trying to find this tree or whatever that looks like it, if I hit one that looks like it, but it's not in my area, not by a long shot, I don't have to worry about it. See, I just know that, no, that's not going to be down here. And it helped me focus a little bit more on my tree. And dendrology is the knowledge of trees. And I was very lucky. I had several foresters that were friends of mine. Grouch has a degree in forestry. And so me and him would have quite a bit of talks years ago, back in the late 90s, about trees and stuff like that. And I would be, we'd be camping together, and I'd come back from something, there'd be a leaf laying on my chair or laying on my bunk or laying on my bedroll or whatever. And he'd say, "What is that?" And I'd have to figure out what it was. And so he was a big help for me learning trees and their uses and foods and medicines and stuff like that. And then once you learn the trees, then get the book of medicinals and apply to the trees. I recommend everybody start with the trees to learn medicinals, because they're available year round and you can always find such and such tree. Certain plants are maybe a more important, but they're dead and gone or buried in snow in the winter and you can't find them. Whereas that oak tree, that walnut tree, that red oak, that cedar, you can find even in the winter, by the bark, by the texture, by the leaves laying around its base and still up on a limb. And so knowing those is a good beginning of how to learn more field guides into trees, into plants, etc. John Palmer, hello to West Central Illinois. Jeff Conley, plants are my weakest link. I have enough knowledge to be dangerous. Um, David Werner, after this is over, after the video is over, if you go back to watch it on YouTube, and it'll be like an hour or so before it goes live. But if you go down on the, that bar underneath the video, there's an extra menu. There's a 3-dot menu there because like share, subscribe, da da da. Click on that and it says activate transcription, and it will bring up in the thing everything that said it'll go ahead and transcribe for you. So any video I got, you can read. So Eddie Lewis, what about the SAS Survival Handbook? Really, really good handbook. Super influential. So much so that it kind of tainted a lot of the industry, because after you've read it, and I recommend everybody have that in their library. After you've read it, learned it, you'll be amazed how many books you'll go and pick up at the bookstore claiming to be a survival manual, open it up and like just a little thumbing through and read and realize this is a rewording of the SAS survival manual. It's almost everybody went to rewording it. And so, yeah, learn that and you basically read 50 books, 50 copies of that book. War Child Open, correct. I made a point in my learning of plants. My number one rule, I do not want to know any plant that has a poisonous lookalike in any form, in anything close. I want it to be A as an A. There is nothing that looks like that, not even close, because so many of those things go down. Oh, this is great, but there's this, which don't mistake it because of that. Forget it. I ain't looking at that. If I'm forced down to where I'm having to rely on wild plants for medicines, foods, whatever, I'm already in a very dire strait, and that's a bad time to consume the wrong thing, just because it's just too dangerous. And so I learned to have foods that I could find that I could eat. Things I can find in the winter and the summer, the fall, to eat, to use medicinally for things like that. And trees are a big, big part of that. And I wanted plants that were so common, I am tripping over them. I don't want to learn some rare little flower that is so great or whatever and has this teeny tiny range and it's only available 2 weeks every fourth leap year or something. I want, wild lettuce, pine needles,